Yes, Spurs fans, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur here. We are going to be, of course, talking about Igor Tudor in a massive week for him at the club. His first test, a very easy one against Arsenal in the North London derby. We'll be discussing what sort of expectations we have ahead of that, and also as well some administrative stuff having to do with the Tottenham Hotspur Supporters Trust met with the club very recently, but unfortunately, the transparency that the club has claimed to have with the fan base and with just the supporters trust has apparently not been followed through because they have decided to omit and edit out a lot of various sections that, to be honest, are kind of very important questions, if you ask me. So definitely going to get stuck into that. We have Billy and Sam, of course, on these Tuesdays. So do thank them, everybody, for being here with us. Smash a like button as you come in here as well. And feel free, as always, to get in your comments. And if you do want to skip the queue or have something answered, of course, immediately, feel free to do it as a super chat. And do really appreciate all the support of the members that are here with us. But let's get this underway here, everybody. Good to have people that are piling in. We're going to start off first with the Supporters Trust and the meeting that they recently had. Going to zoom in on this, so maybe it's a bit easier reading for you guys. But I do have some questions on the fact that there are some interesting concerns that were left edited out by the board and by Vinay and others that were in with the meeting when it came to Supporters Trust. This was the one I thought we'd first get started off with. Fans are concerned at the current position and the direction of the club. The team is not winning and change is not visible. Having watched just 4 home league wins in a year, this anxiety and pessimism is not surprising from the fans. Fans are genuinely concerned at the risk of relegation. The belief generated by the Europa League win has now been totally lost. Fans are concerned at a perceived lack of ambition and at results, performances, and the failure to strengthen the team despite injuries to key first team players. Now, Billy, I feel like this is a pretty damning statement from Supporters Trust that the board has decided not to answer publicly. Why do you think the board did not feel comfortable having the answer to this put out for the rest of the fan base?
To put it plain and simple, it's just running scared, isn't it? Like, obviously, they're showing no accountability for the situation that we're in, and they're trying to. The whole thing gave me very, excuse the politicism, North Korea vibes. Is what it sort of gave me. It's sort of like, it's the kind of thing that you'd expect from a nation like that. They're trying to obviously cover up things and not take any accountability, and it's just crazy, really. I mean, that's a very valid concern. You don't have to be a genius. You don't even need to do a survey to figure out that that's the way that the fan base are feeling right now. I think it's very, very obvious with any, in the games, in the stadium, in the survey, online, any kind of discourse involving Tottenham. All fans are feeling frustrated at the moment. You don't need someone to point that out. And the fact they've essentially ignored it. And I think, as we'll get onto in a minute, I'm sure, I think this is not only does it show little sort of regard for the trust as a body of organization, it also completely sticks 2 fingers up to fans in general as well. So right. It's just, I mean, we'll get onto it in a bit more detail in a minute, but I can't believe it. I couldn't believe it what I was reading, particularly in a time like this. And I think it's particularly disappointing because when Vinay was brought in, the one thing that he was particularly supposed to be good at was sort of transparency and communication. This is, as I said, North Korea levels of transparency at the moment.
Well, that's precisely the point that I was going to kind of ask Sam about, which is a good transition there, because Vinay, everyone's favorite Sam, claimed that, when he came in, he's going to be more communicative, more transparent with the fan base. And to be honest, to bring up this concern that they brought up here, you could say that almost every fan would agree with the concern here that has been raised. The fact that the Europa League win has now just been completely decimated in terms of the optimism that we all had going into this season. The fact that we've only seen 4 league home wins at all this year is an explanation for how pessimistic and how down the Spurs fans are. And there is really a genuine concern of relegation. So they're just raising the concern of how the club has fallen into this situation, how they expect to get out of it. And I guess Vinay, the transparency master, has felt like he couldn't answer that publicly to the rest of the fan base, which is pretty damning, to be honest, if you ask me.
Well, I think the biggest concern is just the seeming lack of plan at pretty much every juncture so far.
Yeah.
I saw someone tweet earlier. I can't remember who it was, so I can't give the backing, but Heitinger was at the club for 33 days, I read. 33 days, and he obviously wasn't kept on by the new staff. They've let him go. So they obviously thought that Frank was going to be there for a long time. They clearly came upon the sacking of Frank, at least from what I how I read into it. They planned that Heitinger and Frank would be the pair going forward, and suddenly, Frank's gone in a matter of days, and then Heitinger goes too. It just feels a bit too coincidental for it to have not been a Frank appointment, and they've lost confidence in Frank for whatever reason that they didn't see for the last 3 months. And I just think it stinks of no plan. You go back to the two directors of football. They didn't want to choose one or the other for some reason, even though Lang has not really shown us anything to, hang our hats on. We've signed basically a bunch of young potential, but unfortunately, in if you're looking at it in objective terms, we sign players that aren't good enough. And I think that I think there's a slight reprieve for Vinay in the sense that you do rarely, I know people say, oh, we only hear from the club when things are going well, but you do rarely hear from other clubs, I feel, all the time. So that in that regard, I do think, but the fact that we're in such a crisis, and I think the one thing that really is true with that statement that they said was the lack of buzz, I feel like we've reached the peak of how little excitement we feel about the club, and now we've actually gone over, and we're trending down, emotionally and in our attachment to the club. And I'm sure a lot of people will agree with me. It just feels like, God, I can't really be bothered anymore. Obviously, I'm maybe more bothered than most that I get myself on the channel to talk about Spurs every week. And we all do, for some reason, we're obsessed with the torture. It's moved past it's moved past therapy now. I feel like I've got nothing left,
We're pure masochists at Tottenham Hotspur, that's for sure. I mean, Dave, I did find this just to be a very valid concern that summarized the general mood of the football club, or the general mood of the fan base, should I say. And the fact that they didn't feel comfortable answering that. I said to you in the back end before, it's not an easy concern to answer, but that's what Vinay's been paid for. That's what some of these other people that are the chief of communications, or, in some cases, I think one of the people on the board that was there in that meeting was the chief of fan engagement or something like that. That's their whole job. That's their whole remit, is to answer these difficult concerns. But I guess they didn't feel comfortable enough to release their statement to these publicly. I think you're on mute there, Dave.
Well, it's just again, it's just another example of no transparency, from the club, and it's just another reason why people are going to add to the list and why they need to go at the end of the day. And I think that there's enough said there. I don't think there's much more I can say on it. I'm more focused really on the footballing side of things right now, avoiding relegation. What Tudor can bring. I think all of this, to be honest with you, is just a little bit of a pantomime at the moment. Distracting away from the situation that we're in on the football pitch, and it's just not necessary from the club. At the end of the day, right now, through tough times, all you want is a bit of transparency. But I've given up looking for answers from the board, looking for transparency, looking for them to answer questions, because they just refuse to do it, or anything they do ask is a lot of it is just a load of PR baloney at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, let's take some of the comments on this, and then we'll get to one of the other statements, and then we'll move on to Igor Tudor. Seba saying, when was the last time this club even planned anything ahead of time? It's nothing new. They do stuff like this all the time. It's embarrassing for a club of this magnitude to be run the way that it is. Good to have Logan in the house as well, who has sent in a super sticker. Do appreciate it, Logan. Hopefully you enjoy the stream. We'll get on to Igor Tudor in just a second. It's just we only have so much time with Billy, and I do appreciate what Billy has to say when it comes to these issues around the board, of course. And good to have you, Logan. Good evening to you. Steve is in the house. Big up to PH family. Really appreciate your support, as well as William Webb, who's up in Australia, down in Australia, should I say. And then Iceman's in the house as well. Good to have you, Mr. Ricky. Let's go on to another statement that, they decided not to leave publicly. And this had to do with the academy. I know Dave has always kind of been frustrated around the lack of players coming through the academy that we all are led to believe are supposed to be good enough. This was one of them when it came to the sort of lack of players coming through. Another valid concern that is on the majority of Spurs fans' minds before the season began, especially during the transfer window, was why do you think they're not why do you think they did not want to answer publicly about the youth players being brought through the club. They were saying that players have been put out on loan repeatedly. Guys like Luka Vuskovic have not been recalled from loan. Just the idea that the academy players have not seen any real pathway to the first team, Billy. And also they brought up how there's no real thread of style of play from the academy to the first team as well. So the idea that they didn't even feel comfortable answering that one, that one kind of felt like a softball to me that they could have answered.
Yeah, and it's just again, I mean, these are such, valid concerns as well, and concerns which you would think the CEO of a £1 billion company, which is what he's been entrusted to do as his role in Vinay, should be able to easily have an answer for. It's not a particularly challenging question. It's not like getting to the root of a problem which we didn't know existed. This is obvious, plain and simple stuff. And I think, and this is my sort of big problem with this, the way that this is organized at the moment, is like, do these guys even know how to sell Tottenham at the moment going forward, in terms of, selling the club, in terms of, the promotion of it? And like, if they can't speak to the fans and say, well, this is where we're going, how are we going to attract any kind of players? How are we going to attract anything in the future? And I think if you sort of look at the way that things are going since these guys have taken over, Sam just said it, we're on a massive downward trajectory at the moment. We're losing managers, we've lost director of football, everything has gone a complete shit show since they've taken over. And like, if these guys are directing us in the summer, which is a massive summer for this football club, like, we could, let's pray that we don't get relegated. And if we don't get relegated, then this summer is one of our biggest summers of the modern era. Like, we have to adjust everything that's just happened and react to it. And if they can't be honest with the fans, and they can't be honest with the supporters trust about saying, well, this is our plan, this is how we're going to solve that, and how are they going to do anything? It's really, really frustrating. And I think, it's just so easy to come up with the usual nonsense. I mean, I guess on one side, you'd hope that they're being honest. It's just the youth in the academy is something really, really easy to understand what's going to happen. You just need to create a pathway for the players, and you just need to invest in the youth, which generally speaking, they do. What obviously they have got wrong is the loaning, and there's no pathway to the first team, but it's very easy to assess that problem and know how to do better. It's just really frustrating that they didn't communicate that.
Yeah, that was kind of my take from it, was that even if they can recognize maybe it's not gone according to plan, it's a pretty easy one to answer. Like, and just say,
it's the accountability thing, right? Again, it's the accountability thing, isn't it? It's just none.
Well, I think the fact that, like, when you look at their tenure in general, right? In the summer we brought in 2 loans. In the January we didn't really commit to much. They're not really committing to answering questions. I see this before in big businesses where either the people are setting up or they're going out of business, and that's what it sort of feels like to me, that they're just not committing to absolutely anything, and that they're just looking to sort of move on in the summer. To be honest with you,
do you agree with me, Sam, that this was, if anything, a bit of a softball for them to answer, even if we feel like they're doing a bad job when it comes to bringing through the academy players? They can still answer it in some sort of politician-like manner, right? But I guess they decide not to.
I thought that the split between Paratici and Langer was the fact that, like, Langer was going to be kind of in charge of all that side of it, youth, development, and trying to actually create a pathway to the first team. I may have misunderstood that, but I would want to hear from him, because he's happy to give like some, slop after the transfer window about why we didn't need to sign anyone. When no one can come back and ask him questions. But I guess in a meeting like this, there would have been ample time for that. I don't know much about how these meetings work in terms of like who's there and who's not. But yeah, I mean, it is pretty poor. I think that as well, when you look back at when Pochettino was here, he had the youth team playing a very similar brand of football to what he wanted them to play if they made it up to the first team. And I think that him leaving is probably a reason why we haven't seen many players make it. I mean, over the course, like to the end of his tenure and the start of the next, you saw players like Ollie Skip coming through, Tanganga coming through, and I guess they slotted into the first team, even if they weren't necessarily good enough to be consistent players. Mm-hmm. But they slotted into the first team because there was still, I mean, up until basically we pretty much had the exact same squad that Pochettino had, right? Other than like a few players here and there that had left or had been brought in. So the basic foundation of these players' footballing sort of ideologies fit into the rest of it. Whereas now, you know, we look at teams like Brentford, for example, teams like Brighton, that have a clear direction from behind the scenes with how they want all of their teams to play, so that even down to new managerial and board appointments, everyone comes in and they're all singing off the same hymn sheet.
But that's the biggest problem, though, at Tottenham, though, Sam, you know, and you are right that, you know, Johan Lang, it is his job to sort of look after that side of things in terms of the youth. But to be honest with you, this is where I'm not surprised why they didn't answer the question, because it's not on individuals to dictate what way we should be playing at Spurs. That should be the culture set from the ownership. This is the way I want my club to look like on the football pitch. And to Sam's point, everyone slots in after that. You know, I'm not being funny, but to sort of leave that in Johan Lang's hands, I mean, the guy couldn't even handle transfer windows and stuff like that. I don't want him setting the culture at this club. And at the end of the day, how can the club answer it when they don't know what style they want? They've gone from defensive to attacking to defensive back to Igor Tudor. He's looking to come in and be more aggressive and play on the front foot. You know what? But at the end of the day, if we really want to create a pathway for these youngsters to come true, you have a philosophy run right throughout your club, so that and the academy's playing the exact same way with the exact same sort of philosophy, ideals and stuff like that, and you train them to a certain, you know, to that way, so that basically then when they do start reaching the likes of 17, 18, 19 years of age, they're already understand the tactics, they already understand the demands, and they're already up to physical levels. So when they get their opportunity, there's not that much of a gap. But what we're doing with all of them, we've loaned them out here, there, and everywhere. They're being put into different systems, different philosophies. Some of our best attacking players have gone to defensive-minded sort of clubs and managers and stuff, and it's absolutely insane. It's insane. And I think, to be honest with you, when you see what like Chelsea are locked in with some of the other clubs that they have snapped up around Europe and stuff, Tottenham need to do the same with another club so that we can start feeding these guys there. Also try and instill a similar philosophy into that football club so that the ones that aren't ready to make that jump but you think are going to be good enough, you shift over there. They're playing that sort of way, and then all of a sudden you're giving them the experience they need. But, you know, it's so important, especially when you look at the likes of Premier League and Champions League squad registrations. They all require to have some players that have come through this football club from the academy and stuff. And every year we're having to maneuver things around, register 3 or 4 goalkeepers. And if we don't do that, then you're leaving yourself short, and you're already leaving yourself at a massive disadvantage. And this is a huge area where the club need to get a grip of, because it just seems to me that young players now that come through the academy, a lot of clubs are just selling them on without actually looking to develop them at all. Because when they take that profit, it's 100%, you know, towards some of the financial constraints that they're putting on these clubs and stuff like that. So, you know, it's just absolutely mad. But back to the reality is, how can the club answer them when they don't even know what philosophy they want, so they can't create a pathway?
I think as well with the Jack, just
go ahead.
With the loans, it's like you could probably count on your hands the number of successful loans we've actually managed to get our players to. Every season it's the same thing. You know, we've pretty much destroyed Dane Scarlett's career by just sending him on terrible loan after terrible loan. And it's frustrating because, again, you feel like that's the kind of thing that you actually, one, you would want to take time to think about, but two, it can't be that difficult to, as Dave said, look for a club that has a similar ideology, or at least like has an attacking philosophy, or you know, that even if they aren't necessarily a club of the level that you want the player to play at, surely it's better they play in like League Two rather than the Championship to actually get minutes in a men's game, rather than just rotting on a bench in a different club, in a different city, in a different country, maybe, that not you know, developing, and in the end just resenting the fact that they're out there, you know?
Yeah.
I just think what's also damning is that if you actually have the time, which I don't encourage people, you know, losers like me read through the meeting minutes, but if you do get the time to do it, it's not like they're really stating all that much. Even like the final version of the minutes are just things like, the club have acknowledged the feedback. They've decided that they're going to be going with this, like only like 1 or 2 sentence type of responses to the majority of the things that the supporters trust raised. The fact that they didn't even bother to allow like just 1 or 2 sentence responses to some of these, you know, concerns and everything is, I think, what's really damning. And it makes you wonder like how they even answered it in real time if you were actually in that meeting. Of course, we can't ask them, the supporters trust, you know, how they did end up answering it, but that just shows that they weren't even comfortable allowing the supporters trust to word what their answers might have been, to some of these concerns, which is, I think, in a way, kind of scary, almost North Korea vibes, like Billy was saying earlier.
I just think when you look at the whole situation and them not being transparent and stuff, and the rumours that came out a while ago about Daniel Levy potentially looking to sell his shares to someone else and not back towards the Lewis family or that, I think the Lewis family are also looking at it and going, well, we don't want to be within a power struggle between, other potential investors and ourselves and stuff like that. And I just think they're closing ranks now, and they're going to be sounding out offers to get out of Tottenham.
Yeah.
What seems like to me, it stinks of it.
And by the way, like the people that were actually there for the meeting, you would expect would be kind of the chief BSers or, the guys that would be good at, giving out these answers. It was the chief communications officer, the head of supporter engagement, and Vinay, the chief executive officer. So all people that you would expect would be capable, even if they are tough questions or tough concerns to answer, you think they would have been capable to do it. But we're going to move on over to Igor Tudor, John Stokes, member for 4 years. Big up to you, wow. John. He's saying, I think earlier put in a funny comment. He said, "You're the Igor," or whatever he said from earlier. That was very good, John. Good to have you with us. John. Hopefully this 4th year, or now approaching close to a 5th year with us, John will be the year the Igor, but he just needs him to do a good job. Thank you, John, for your support. And then Sugar Ray.
We're in the Premier League for the 5th year, John.
Yeah, seriously. Sugar Ray, I'm full of optimism about Tudor, proper football man. I'll be at the North London Derby. If we nick something, it should be and will be a carnival. Get to some others, and then we'll go back to this one, Sugar Ray. Vince Vega saying, no idea what to expect with Tudor. Complete gamble, like they can't even go. It can go either way. Come on, you Spurs. Paul saying, I like this cut of his jib. Good to see you and Ferguson in the house. And then Paul Brown as well. Good to have you, as always, Paul Brown. But yes, let's move on to Igor Tudor. Billy, what did you make of the signing of Tudor? Because we were all thinking about a interim manager that had Premier League experience, someone like a Harry Redknapp, someone like a Tim Sherwood. Are you more satisfied with the fact that we've gone with someone who does have recent experience as an interim manager, even though it's not the Premier League?
Yeah, I am. To answer that question, yeah, definitely. I think that was probably the smart move in hindsight. I think it's funny how football works, isn't it? Because this time on Friday, when it happened, I'm sure it was Friday, wasn't it? I had essentially no idea who Igor Tudor was, other than a Croatian centre back, and now 5 days later, I know his whole career history, sort of everything. You just very quickly learn just from him being linked to Tottenham, everything about him really quickly, don't you? And sort of on Friday at the time, if I go back to that kind of space, it was out of nowhere. It kind of came. Really surprised by it. Obviously, there were links to him under Paratici in about November, December time, and that was a name that got bandied about by Paul O'Keefe back then. And which makes it a little bit baffling that they didn't do it at that time, but then they got rid of Paratici, or Paratici left, and then they did it then. But I think the more at first on Friday I was a little bit skeptical, because I put a tweet out saying, what can you guys tell me about Igor Tudor? And it was quite a lot of negative responses I got back, because I don't think his latest spell in Juve went particularly well towards the end. But then the more I've sort of read about it and the more I've learned about it, he's almost like a specialist interim, which I've never really seen before, other than when Gus Hiddink used to do it back in the day in the Premier League. For Chelsea a couple of times, he's almost a bit like the new Gus Hiddink kind of thing. And for the actual situation and the context of the situation, it seems kind of perfect. You can definitely see the line of thinking behind it, because I think in his last 2 jobs, in his first 8 games, he's had 5 wins, 2 draws and a loss. And if he does that here, then we'll be absolutely fine and we will survive. And I think our only objective, I saw, James Horcastle of The Athletic called him an escape artist, and that's what we need at the moment. So since then as well, I've been a bit more impressed. I have to say, I know we'll talk about it in a minute, but I was impressed by his interview today. I think he nailed the tone of that for sure. Just saying the kind of things that we want to be hearing in this situation. And, he was sort of saying he didn't seem to understand what he did seem to understand the situation that the club is in. And it was good to hear that. And, I've as we've spoken about on this show for the last 6 months, every Tuesday, I've been so, every single Frank press conference there's something which he says which annoys me or just baffles me. And it was good to be able to listen to a full interview of the manager and not come away baffled. So I've definitely, since Friday, I've definitely turned around onto the appointment. I do think, hopefully, it's good. But I think the scary thing is if this goes wrong, then we are walking a tightrope of relegation. So there's a lot at stake here.
Well, it's relieving to hear, Billy, that he's got a good first touch when it comes to his interview, at least, whereas Thomas Frank certainly did not.
He didn't say we're gonna lose games, as I always remember Dave mentioning a few.
It's aged so well, hasn't it? Sam, I mean, we all were thinking like Harry Redknapp. We're all thinking like Tim Sherwood. Then this guy comes out of nowhere. To be fair to him, he's walked into very difficult situations at massive clubs in the past. It's just not any Premier League clubs that he's done it for. Is that a concern for you, or are you actually more happy with this appointment rather than it being a Harry Redknapp or a Tim Sherwood type?
To be honest, this is going to end up for me being a bit of a blind faith experiment, because the only thing that I personally actually have experienced him footballing wise is, and I didn't even know it at the time, was that Marseille game, right?
Yeah, crazy game.
And, I mean, you could potentially say like, oh, is he too passionate that he didn't realize that if they just got the draw that was already on the cards, they'd have ended up in the Europa League, But then, like to Billy's point, like about the interview, I really liked the fact that he looked so angry the whole time.
Yeah, he really did.
But not. I don't know. I feel like for me, it was like he didn't sugarcoat us and be like, "Oh, it's a massive club. I'm so happy to be here." He was like, "I know exactly what needs to be done. I will do it." I was like, "Okay, cool. Like, I can get behind that."
Yeah.
Which I guess goes back to the whole, Thomas Frank thing. In that opening interview, it was like, okay, like we're gonna build something, like maybe, it's gonna be tough, but we should get there. Whereas with Tudor, it's like, I'm not gonna bullshit you guys. It's gonna be really fucking hard, but we'll do it if everyone buys in. And it's like, okay, like, everyone's just kind of got to get behind the guy now. Yeah, and I almost feel like he has to succeed from the players' point of view, because I feel like it just looks so badly if they can't buy into someone for 3 months to get to stop them from being relegated. I mean, the first thing you're saying is you're going into the changing room and being like, do you guys want to be the team that won the Europa League and then got relegated the next season?
Yeah.
That's it, and that should be more than enough. And if it's not, then the players have a serious mentality issue. And I would be skeptical as any other club looking at this team that couldn't stop themselves from going down after winning a trophy. And, if you look on paper, strengthening, although I can test that, so I think there's context to that, but strengthening on paper, at least in the summer, and ending up in January at a point where not signing anyone on deadline day could have been calamitous and still could be.
Dave, he's saying proper football man, like Graham Souness would say about someone like an Igor Tudor. He also doesn't have the hair that you hated that Thomas Frank had, of course. Igor Tudor, he's clean shaven up there, or at least it's all gone by this stage of maybe having so many headers that he had to win at Juventus. What did you make of just the vibe about Igor Tudor? And I've already asked you about the appointment, so maybe we'll kind of transition towards the interview itself. Do you agree with Sam that and Billy that you liked that maybe he didn't beat around the bush about the situation he's going into?
Look, for me, it's just, I feel like it's good just to have a presence in there again, a real sort of presence in there. He's 6 foot odd, he's a striking figure, and not a guy that looks like he's walked out of a computer room, to be quite honest with you. That's what Frank looked like. I'm not being funny, but with his hair, he didn't know whether he wanted it long or whether he wanted it short. That's why he had that sort of mid-bob. And, you look at the tactics on the pitch, he almost employed the same as his haircut. I'm glad he's absolutely gone. But what I like about Tudor is he's actually walked in with more positivity, even though we're in the midst of a relegation battle, than what Frank did when he walked in the middle of the summer. Frank walked in, said, and I famously keep quoting it, we are going to lose games. I can guarantee you that. Well, he certainly fucking delivered on that promise. Fair play to him in that regard. But with Tudor, there's so much to like about his interview in general. I've took a lot of notes here sort of on things he said, but the very last thing that I really liked what he said, and it's one big bugbear of mine with some players that come to Tottenham, because I do believe we sign a lot of talented players, but a lot of them sometimes don't feel like they have to work as hard as other people. And at the end of the day, hard work beats talent every day of the week, and he spoke about, the fact that we do have some good technical players, but the most important thing is you got to have hard work with that. And one thing we're certainly going to see on the football pitch is a team that embodies that. And I think that's what you need in a relegation battle. People that are going to leave it all out on the pitch. And by the sounds of it, he's not coming in scared going, we need to shut up shop. My games are going to be cagey. He wants to go for it. And I would rather go down swinging rather than submitting to teams like we have done for the last fucking 6-7 months under Tommy Frank. I can't do it that way, and I'd rather go down swinging. And
Mm.
for me, he just comes in with an assurance about him, but no wonder why. I mean, this is the 7th time he's been brought in mid-season to save clubs, from whatever turmoil they've been in. He's done it successfully everywhere he's been to a large degree. And, he's got big club experience. And another thing he spoke about at the start was about having relationship with the players, which means he's not going to come in and sort of, like he's not going to come in here and insert himself and it's my way or the highway. There's going to be a small element of that, but he wants to build relationship with players, and I think that's what massively is going to help him get the most out of them and get them out of this battle. And when you listen to Pochettino's interviews all the time and talks about Tottenham and in general, he always speaks about the importance of relationships with the players. And for me, I think that's key. You could clearly see Frank didn't have any relationships with the playing squad. Only 3 came out and put out public posts, thanking them after he left. So for me, I'm really excited about it. I really like the positivity that he's coming with, the fight that he's coming with, the hunger that he's coming with. And he also understands the brand of football that we want to be played. And he wants to attack it, this problem head on in the way Spurs fans want to attack it. So I think he's already off to a winner there. He hasn't come in setting off fire alarms all over the place. This is going to be difficult, blah, 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 and telling us everything we already know, how shit we are, lack of confidence, etc. We already know all this. He's come in and he's just giving off positive vibes, and I respect that. That was my big problem with Thomas Frank from the very beginning. He was almost scared of what was to come. He was almost scared of the challenge at Tottenham Hotspur. This guy isn't, and that's what we need right now. Someone that's going to come out and front it.
Do you know what it really reminds me of? Obviously, in my career, my profession is when you get a class of a teacher that just cannot handle them whatsoever, and you just go and get a massive bloke to come in and give them like a few weeks. That's what
usually teacher.
Yeah, and you just get him to come in for 2 weeks and sort them out, and then they go back to another teacher again. It's just like Frank was such supply teacher energy. Like he was just could not cope with anything, and I think Igor was like the scary geography teacher that walks in and sorts everyone out.
He's almost like the woodshop teacher, the principal, and the PE teacher all combined into one person. Queen Ellie saying, evening, Dave and Jack and Billy. Sam and Tudor will be a hero if we win, or some fans, he could be a 0 if we lose to that lot. But what happens in the next 11 matches or even before will decide our fate. And also, by the way, Ellie, do really appreciate the generous super chat that you sent us towards the end of the stream. Unfortunately, we just ended up timing it wrong in terms of us clicking end stream. But she said, for you 2 wonderful lads who work so hard, bring us all the great Spurs content, honest, straight talking to the point. And this is an appreciation of all your brilliant shows you put on for us all. Really do appreciate Ellie, and very kind and generous. Thanks for Sugar Ray from earlier as well. And then Ian Ferguson, member for 46 months, saying, I'm forcing myself to be optimistic about Tudor. It doesn't do any good to be mad about it for now. Sam more or less said something similar, I guess, in the beginning, Ian, where he said he's just going to have to be blindly optimistic. And there's an element to that, whether you maybe wanted a different interim manager. We all knew it wasn't going to be ideal who we brought in, wasn't going to be a perfect option. And kind of with the games that are left, with the situation we find ourselves in, kind of just really have to hope, I guess, and blind hope in some cases, that they've made the right decision, that they brought in the right guy to be able to get us out of this situation. So I do see where you're coming from on that one, Ian. Tudor spoke about the injury situation, Billy. The situation, he said, is not easy because, as you know, better than me, we have a lot of injured players. So we need first to find the best system to suit the players that are available in this moment. Everyone is expecting him to go to that tried and trusted back 3 that he's used in the past. But is that the best system for us to go with, considering the injuries, like you mentioned?
I think it would depend very much if Pedro Porro is fit, as he's rumored to put. Frank said a couple of weeks back that he might be fit for the North London derby. So I saw Richarlison was training today, which is good to have another body back. But wing backs we're really short on, obviously, with Udogie being injured, Porro being injured, and then we've got Spence and Archie Gray have been playing there recently, and maybe. Because if you look at the way his system, I think he's played like 90% of all of his managerial games with a back 5. Sorry, I think there's only been a handful without a back 3 and wing backs, and he gets all of his width from wing backs, which I guess is also good for us because we don't have any wingers either. So I guess if you're going to choose between the 2, I'd probably favour wing backs over wingers, just because with Odebear being injured, Kudus being injured, we don't have a left winger. We've only really got Tell as a wide player at the moment, but we don't have a right winger. So I think we'll have to prioritise wings back, which also means that we'll probably have to either play Jed Spence as a right-footed left-back, or he might have to opt for Sousa, which I think could be interesting. I think what's just badly needed, though, is just a fresh pair of eyes on the squad. I think, there was a lot of misprofiling under Frank, and a lot of, just sort of people like Bergwijn in particular were just sort of played out of position all the time. Xavi Simons sometimes as well, and I just think a fresh pair of eyes is needed. But I think it'd be interesting because I do think he'll stick with the back five. And then again, because of our injury crisis, that means you'll probably have to see Paulinho play centre back, and maybe Archie Gray play right back until Porro's back. But I would rather that than sort of muddling around with it, because this is obviously a system where he works in. But I think, to be honest, whatever system you play, there's injuries all over it. So I think he'll probably go to the one that he likes, which is a back five or back three, however you look at it.
The back three, back five didn't work against Arsenal under Thomas Frank. Sam, do you think that's what he should go with, even though it didn't work maybe last time out? Could it be better under Igor Tudor?
One of my biggest gripes with Frank is that first game against PSG, the back five, we played probably the best we played for the rest of the season. But he didn't stick with it, which to me, I know we didn't have any defenders, but they could have gone out and signed him another centre-back or kept one of the youngsters in for backup. So I was confused by that. But there's concerns with basically whatever he decides to play, because if he plays a back four, then he's either got to make the decision of, this is assuming that Porro is out. He's got to make a decision on whether he plays Jed Spence on the left and Archie Gray on the right, or if he plays Spence on the right and Sousa on the left. I think, I don't know, it depends. I feel like you're limiting yourself probably in theory more with Gray being there rather than having a natural defense, like a defender playing left back. But throwing a 19-year-old who's played what like 17 minutes of football since he's come to the Prem / I think it's 20 odd games before that, throwing him into a North London derby where we've picked up, I think it's 1 in 10 games, 1 point in 10 against Arsenal and Chelsea since Ange came in. That's including obviously Frank's 2 as well. So, that's traditionally a very, very tough place. I know it's going to be at home, but still traditionally very, very tough game, tough atmosphere.
Spurs home stadium has been a tough place for us to go.
Yeah. As you said at the beginning, four league home games or something stupid. But I think then there's also an issue with playing the back three, because you're going to have to play Paulinho out of position as well. And although I think Paulinho's been really good in that centre back position, are we then missing his combative nature in the midfield?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like I would risk it and play Sousa. If I had to pick, I'd go back 4 and play Sousa and keep Paulinho just sitting in front of those defenders, taking chunks out of people's ankles at every opportunity. Yeah. I feel like that for me, I feel like he could do either way. Again, as I said, I don't really know anything about him or his philosophy other than what I saw before. But I feel like for me, the back 4 makes the most sense.
Yeah,
I know.
Igor Tudor seems like a chunk taker, Dave. He seems like he's done it in the past. So he probably would enjoy Paulinho.
Yeah, I know. I can envision them. I was watching a video of Conte after we beat Arsenal in North London Derby a couple of years ago, and he's like aggressively grabbing players and shaking them and loving them and stuff. And I can see him doing the same with Paulinho, probably a few chest pumps, him Romero as well. I think, but I like that, to be honest. But when it comes to the likes of the formation, Jack, I understand where the question is being brought out of because of what you said, earlier on in the interview about, I need to pick the system to what I've got sort of now.
Because of the injuries. Yeah.
Yeah. But later on in the interview, he did say that style is more important than the system. And that is something that I was saying under Thomas Frank all season long. I don't care what formation the guy wants to play. It's the instructions you apply with whatever formation you're playing. Like, are you going to sit off and play low block like Tommy Titty did? Or are you going to go out and be aggressive, go after, press man for man and look to turn the ball higher up the pitch and go and score goals that way? What are you going to do in possession? Are you just going to lump it long like we've done under Thomas Frank for most of the season? Or are you going to look to get it down, play quickly and, go forward with a bit of attacking intent and a bit of class about you rather than just get it out wide lump it in the box, but not instruct players to also get in and flood the box then. So for me, I don't think this guy is, like, obviously when you look at his record, he more prefers to play the back three. But I don't think he's really wedded to coming in here like other managers, like, for instance, Jose, Conte, Ange Postecoglou all walked in and said, we're playing this way. This guy isn't here to do that. This guy is here to help. That's what he sort of alluded to earlier on in the interview. So he is just going to use what he's got available to him and put out the formation accordingly. And, I think that's something that has been lost in football management in general, actually. Most managers are walking in now, this is my way, not necessarily have the squad to play that way. And then all of a sudden they're walking away going and detaching themselves from the blame, going, well, that's not my problem. I didn't have the players to play my way. What's like, where has it changed along the line where a manager always come in and said, right, this is what I've got, this is what I'm adding, I can get somewhere to what I want to go, but I'll use this year, get the best out of it, and get further towards it, with the next window and stuff like that. That's been lost in football management, and I really like that Tudor is sort of about that. He's not wedded to it. It's like, well, this is what I've got available, this is going to be the best system. But it's always about the instructions employed with a system. You can play a 4-2-3-1, but you can make it so defensive if you want. You can play a 5 at the back. You can make it defensive or attacking what you want. And that is dictated by the instructions employed. And for me, I don't really give a shit about the formation. He can put out 10 defenders all he wants. As long as he sends them to press all over the pitch, I don't mind. I just want to be more aggressive than what we were under Thomas Frank. And I think he's going to do that regardless of what formation or system he puts out.
Just we need to let Billy go soon. Billy, please give a plug for Change for Tottenham. And also, if you did have anything to say on this, when Tudor said in his interview, I never saw the coach who said that he can play for a draw. It's not possible. So offensive football, yes, but smart. Sounds like he never watched Thomas Frank then, if he's never met a coach who would go for a draw.
That's exactly what we want to hear, right? And, Sam, when Sam was talking about that earlier, I didn't even think about the fact that he went for that. They went for the win against us and then ended up losing.
I wonder if that reference to that.
Yeah,
is that a cheeky little reference?
Yeah. I didn't even think about that at the time, but yeah, that was funny. Obviously, the Højbjerg goal was iconic, and there's a really good picture of him as well, where that's doing the rounds on Twitter, where he says, "I'm very happy" as the subtitle, but he looks absolutely depressed. This guy, he's not much of a smiler, is he? So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and hopefully, when I speak to you guys again on Tuesday, we might have a little result of the North London derby to talk about.
That'd be nice, lad.
So. Thanks, Billy. Thanks for coming on.
Enjoy the game.
Billy.
Everybody do follow Change for Tottenham, of course, for more information around protests and, of course, keeping the board accountable and as well anything that Billy might be associated with over there. And, of course, if you want to follow his personal X, welcome to do so. There are plenty of people that have been watching us because of his very popular Twitter account. So we do appreciate you guys.
Watching right now.
If you did want to follow us over to YouTube, please welcome to do so. Well over 200 people in the house over on YouTube. Smash the like button if you're in here, everybody. I'm not sure if we're even at 100 likes. I'd like to hope that half the people are enjoying the stream. Just quickly on that, Sam, do you think that was a little dig towards Thomas Frank? The fact that he mentioned that he's never met a coach that would play for a draw. He said it's not even possible. So he said offensive football is the way to play, but we have to still do it smartly. Is he taking a little dig at Thomas Frank?
I think because it's impossible to tell, the answer is 100% yes.
Because there's no manager that liked to draw more than Thomas Frank. Like how many times
Thomas Frank did go out defending and nil all, quite famously.
Yeah, more than once. Plenty of draws he had a lot of praise for.
Yeah, look, I mean,
Monaco, Bodo Glimt, games where we played terribly, you could say.
Look, I don't know how the Bodo game, the Monaco game, even the bloody the Villarreal game that we won 1-0 off an own goal in the 4th minute. So it's funny because like I look at the stats and Vicario's got like the most clean sheets in the Champions League, right? And some of those games were honestly worse than watching paint dry. Like some of them were horrendous. And then all of a sudden, we had like the last 3 games, we were actually fairly decent, and it kind of feels like everyone forgot. But damn, that was a tough time, and I hope we never go back.
Yeah. Don't bring me back to Monaco. I just found it interesting because the last manager we had was I've never heard a manager praise more draws in our time as a Spurs fans than Thomas Frank. So I did wonder if that was a slight dig. I don't know what he really meant by it, but it was interesting. Maybe it was just a way of him saying that he plays to win and that we do need wins if you wanted to be kind to Thomas Frank and if there wasn't necessarily any dig there.
I would like to think he's super calculated and super clever, Jack, and that he sort of found a way to have a dig at anyone that might dig at him for not taking that draw at Marseille against Tottenham that time, like Sam mentioned earlier on. But also, maybe a little bit of a dig at Thomas Frank in the way we've previously played. I'd like to think he's clever enough to sort of have a double whammy, 2 birds at 1 stone there.
Yeah. Just another question, Dave. What is the injury situation for him? How does he sort of emphasize this running fitness and physicality that's he says is so important? He mentioned that a few times, that it's really important in the modern game to be running, to have fit players, and that physicality goes a very long way now, he said, in 2026. But considering the injury situation, how can he get his players to run harder, work harder for him without incurring even more injuries?
Well, this is where my big fear comes in around Tudor in general. I like the jib of him. I like his vibe. I like what he's had to say today. I like the way he wants to approach the games, in terms of being aggressive and attacking and stuff like that. But with playing that way, as we've seen under Ange Postecoglou, comes injuries. And that's where my big fear comes in, because we can't afford to get any more players injured. Now, you're hoping the fact that he's brought in this sort of physical coach is what they describe it as, but really it's just he's a fitness coach, and his job is to get the players up to their required fitness to be able to sort of cover this amount of ground, and also he's in charge of getting them prepped before games and stuff like that. So maybe a different approach in that regard might help some of these guys, because sometimes if you're not an extremely fit side, you can pick up injuries easy for not being fit and stuff like that, and you're probably more susceptible to them being fit than you are sort of super fit and stuff like that. So maybe he's looking at that angle of it a little bit and trying to improve their fitness and hoping that they become a bit more robust, because we didn't really have this injury crisis or massive injury crisis under Pochettino ever, and that was the fittest I've ever seen Tottenham ever in the Premier League. The reason why we were so good and the reason why teams couldn't compete with us is because we were like Duracell bunnies. None of them were as fit as we were. You go back and look at Harry Kane under Pochettino and Harry Kane after he left. It's 2 complete different physiques. Harry Kane's stomach was sucked in almost under Pochettino when we had the tight-fitting jerseys and everything else. I was jealous almost to a certain degree, to be fair. So for me, I think maybe he's looking at that angle of it. And also by saying, running like, an extra, 10, 15 kilometers a game or something, we sort of referencing that you would like them to hit. I mean, like, I just think naturally, the more you run about, the more you get about the pitch, the more chance you have of winning games, and I think we've seen that under Thomas Frank more evident than ever before. When we, Burnley, Man City and all at the start of the season, what did we do? We got about the pitch. We went and pressed people. We took the ball off them. We scored goals. Once Thomas Frank stopped doing that and we sat in, and when you're sitting in for large periods, people become lazy. People don't want to bust the gut going forward and stuff like that. So for me, I think maybe that's the angle he's hoping that will stave us off from picking up more injuries, is by making them fitter. So we'll wait and see.
Tyler said, relax there, Dave, when it came to Harry Kane descriptions. MV Joker Dave is saying, now time for the big guns to come on. What does he think he means by that, Dave or Sam? Now that we're alone with Sam, maybe he's the big gun?
Didn't realize that he had guns, to be honest with you. I thought he was a skeleton.
Yeah, Eddie's the muscular man, according to him. Faz Radfar, thank you for the support, by the way, saying big up to my favorite channel. He's also followed up by saying Tudor talks and looks like a proper manager, not Thomas Frank. Everyone's giving like proper football man, Graham Souness type quotes about Igor Tudor, which I really do love. Big up to you, Faz. Very generous support, as well as Gary, who's a member, saying best Spurs site with great insights. Very kind of you, Gary. Do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Paul Manban saying Frank wears a life jacket in the bath. AK Sheg saying, I'm glad we didn't go down the long-term manager route. This guy's a specialist, and if we can win a few games, he'll be the guy that kept us up. Yeah, there's a bit of folklore and legendary.
What I will warn, though, is, and I sort of do agree, right? He has made a career off this, right? But how many times have we seen managers come to Tottenham and not being able to replicate what they've done everywhere else they've been? So, although I'm excited to properly have a go at trying to get out of this relegation scrap and go. And if we were to go down, go the way I would rather go down personally. But there is an air of caution that whatever you see people do at other clubs, even in terms of players and stuff, a lot of them fail to replicate at Tottenham. So just let's not put him down as our savior quite just yet. Let's see what unfolds over the next few games.
It seems like I'm not sure if it's any way selfish, but it seems like there's a tactical move by him for his own career, in that if he gets Spurs to survive, his stock will be established in the Premier League for any other club that finds themselves in a similar situation where, let's say, West Ham end up going down, but then they get brought back up again. You could see him going to a club like that to sort of keep them in the Premier League, to avoid relegation again. Any other club that is either promoted or just narrowly avoided relegation, Nottingham Forest are probably going to sign their sixth manager by next season. He could probably be the guy to keep them up. It seems like he's almost doing this for Spurs, but also for himself to maybe establish himself in the Premier League, because he has been seen as this interim specialist. But plenty of times Premier League clubs will sack a manager and then they are looking for some interim specialists for the rest of the season. So maybe that's what he's taken the job for, is kind of for his own stock really in the game.
Yeah.
MJB saying, will we see our goalkeeper time wasting at 70 minutes at 0-0 again? Alex mentioned saying Frank, to draw is to do. One last and final question for the evening, everybody. I know some people do want to go off and watch some Champions League, so do
Madrid
appreciate
and
you guys.
Benfica. Can't wait.
And the Galatasaray game sounds like it's been crazy, so do appreciate you guys sticking with us and listening to the show. I just had a question on, just let me catch up here. What are your expectations going into the North London derby, Sam, with the amount of injuries we have and it being Tudor's first game in charge? Do we stand a better chance with him now that he's come through the door than we would have if Thomas Frank was still in charge?
I think it's really hard to say until at least we see who's in the squad for the game. Because I could say to you, I feel really worried that we're going to get absolutely spanked because we're missing X, Y, and Z. And then on Saturday or Sunday, whenever the game is, that bunch of those players are in the squad, and it's nothing like how I thought. But, I mean, looking at it now, I think the strongest thing he's got going for him is the unknown element to his style. And sorry, Dave just messaged me and it really threw
No, because you messaged me saying forward it to me. I'll read it after. I don't know what you're talking about.
I have no idea.
These guys are gossiping in the background here, everybody.
No, because he messaged me and I don't know what he's talking about.
Oh, I sent it to Eddie. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that for it's the unknown element for him that is gonna help him. Arsenal might not know exactly what it is. Plus, I think as well, you have to really take the game to them. Like, as much as I wasn't necessarily Frank out, and that doesn't mean necessarily that I was Frank in either. But I couldn't see him going into this game and really taking it to them, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, from what I've been told, he likes to play on the front foot, Tudor. Likes to have at least some sort of attacking aspect to his game. And I look at the Brentford game, I look at the Sunderland game, and even the United game against them recently. Like, if you take the game to them, they're not as good as they appear. The funny thing is, like, the underlying stats, their attacking underlying stats are basically the same as us. In terms of like they're scoring from corners, they're not really creating a lot from open play. But the difference is they've got quality all over the pitch, unfortunately, and at the moment, at least, we don't. But if we take it to them, we've seen teams of a lesser quality go there and get something out of the game. We've just got to be brave. And if we are brave, and I do see players putting everything into it, we're not making stupid mistakes. Maybe that's asking too much, because I don't think there's been one game in the last 5 years where we haven't made a stupid mistake. But as long as we're not, we're sticking to what they're being instructed to do, and they are giving everything and leaving it out there on the pitch, even with a loss, obviously I'll be disappointed, but I'll be happy to have seen them put effort in finally. But if they don't, then it's also, for me, it's not necessarily a Tudor thing. If they don't, because he's only been there for one game. So it kind of just, it is what it is for him. It's just another, slight on the players, basically.
Do we think we stand a better chance, Dave, now that Tudor's in charge, even though it is his first game? Do we have a better chance of getting something from this game with him in charge instead of sticking with Thomas Frank?
Look, I think it's not a guarantee. It's a stab into the unknown. But I think, yeah, you've got a better chance. I think on the front, Thomas
Nothing
Frank,
to lose, really. Yeah.
run of 2 wins in 17 games. Sort of probably tells you that we were destined for another loss. To a certain degree, and the way we approached the last North London derby, if we were to approach that the same way at home, it would probably turn toxic. Like, I mean, super toxic. Fans would lose their rag. Fans would be looking to get at board members and everything else at that point. Like West Ham a couple of years ago when they tried it with their owners and stuff like that. So for me, I think, the writing was on the wall, and that's why they needed to make a change. No one inside the club believed they were going to win or at least be competitive in that North London derby under Thomas Frank. So I think we had to take the gamble. I think we had to make the change. I'm hoping the sort of unknown factor to a certain degree in terms of what Tudor's going to, put out on the pitch, I'm hoping might help us, especially inside maybe the first 15, 20 minutes, especially if we apply some aggressiveness towards it in terms of willing to get at Arsenal and not allow them to settle, because that's been the biggest problem at home this season under Thomas Frank, is we sat off teams. We went at them for like the first 5 minutes, didn't get any luck. Then we sat off them, and it doesn't matter who they were coming here, rotating the ball across the back line and the goalkeeper, building their way into the game, finding some confidence, and then start to come forward, and we're getting joy. And Arsenal would have just repeated the exact same thing. Whereas this guy, I'm hoping he will send us after them to be a lot more aggressive. And then I think the fans will respond to that. And we all know what happened a couple of years ago. The fans absolutely humiliated Arsenal there a few years ago under Conte, and they played a massive part in that victory, along with the quality from some of the players. But the fans literally were the 12th man dragging them over the line. So I think, all that could make it a very dangerous game for Arsenal within the first half. But to Sam's point, you're just hoping none of them imbeciles make a stupid mistake that undoes all of our good work. So, but I think there's definitely a chance that we'll be slightly more competitive. And the fact that he's also kept the set piece coach, he might end up being a masterstroke, might even nick a winner from that. So we'll wait and see. But for me, I think the change needed to happen, because if not, the writing was on the wall for that North London derby. And to be honest with you, how many people would have turned up? There's tickets available up until recently.
It was a bit of a nothing to lose situation for me. I think it's not to say that who knows will be that much better with Igor Tudor, especially with only it being his first game in charge, only so long to try to establish the system. He has only so many players available. Yeah. Losing Odebear is a huge loss right before this game, too, for the rest of the season. I do feel for the situation Tudor is walking into, but you'd imagine building off of maybe Sam's point and the fact that these players now have gotten Thomas Frank sacked, Ange Postecoglou was sacked. They could go from being the team that won the Europa League to potentially getting relegated with this new guy that's come in. And it's quite obvious to them he's being brought in to save you guys from relegation, to save this club from relegation. You would think you could sort of start to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, really. And you would imagine that these players will kind of establish that mindset now that it's finally become real to them, that they could, in fact, get relegated. And maybe that with a new manager is just sort of the indication of that. Whereas if they stuck with Thomas Frank, you could sort of pretend or sort of ignore the fact that we have been close to teetering with relegation for a while now. So maybe now that we do have someone like Tudor, who everyone was saying is this, proper football man, has sort of this intimidation factor about him, could be the right sort of vibe, at least going into the North London derby. Not sure if that's going to guarantee a point or a win or anything, but it's almost nothing to lose for me.
There's a quote. It's reputations take a lifetime to build and only a moment to destroy. And like Romero, to have a relegation on his CV as a captain, I wouldn't want to be. It's seeing the aftermath of that when Messi saying this guy's the best, and now he's relegated. So
right,
a lot of these players will have the same thing. I mean, maybe they'll be thinking, "Oh, look, I'll take the hit to my reputation if it means I can get out of this shit." But some of them might feel less inclined to do that. So you'd hope that no matter if it's for selfish reasons or not, they pull their fingers out and actually put in a performance that we can all be proud of on the weekend.
I think the one thing I'm banking on is, under Thomas Frank, we got off to a good start, new manager bounce compared to the way the season ended the season before. Under Ange, got off to a good start compared to the way the season ended before, good manager bounce. Even Nuno got off to a 3-game start, clean sheets and stuff like that. It's all we need from this guy. Just get that new manager bounce, and that'll be enough to keep us out of relegation, out of trouble. And you're hoping that starts with this weekend, you know, that you see a complete different attitude, a complete different team, you know, because where the shackles are off, they're almost free. And, you know, usually the first game under a new manager, the players have a point to prove to go, well, it wasn't us, it was that manager before. And you're hoping you see that reflected on the pitch this Sunday, which if it does, it gives you half a chance.
Yeah.
Whether we actually have the bottle to get over the line in the North London Derby remains to be seen, but it gives us half a chance to at least be competitive and make it uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I think we will wrap it up there, though. Everybody, do really appreciate, of course, all the people that have come in with us. Thank you to Ellie. Thank you to Sugar Ray. Thank you to Ian Ferguson, John Stokes, Faz Radfar, all of you guys, Logan, for supporting the channel, as well as Eddie Joker Davis. Appreciate you guys. I forgot to post the members' questions, but we'll just quickly take Artist T. That's on me, Artist T. He said, do you think the English media wants us to go down? So much talk about it. I'm starting to think they'll conspire to make it happen. Sometimes I question whether you want us to go down, Artist T, with some of the things that you ask us on a regular basis. But Sam, is there an English media bias, since you are the resident English person on the panel? Do you think there is a desire for us to go down from the media?
Well, over the last week, I have seen more people start to suggest it. Like, I think it was Darren Fletcher, the commentator, who said that we were basically his top pick for the third team to go down. And as much as, like, in my mind, that just sounds absolutely ridiculous. And even if we end up staying up, right? Well, I feel like we will end up staying up, but
yeah,
even if we do end up staying up, just the fact that we were actually being discussed as a team that could potentially go down is just actually a disgrace. Genuinely a disgrace. And one thing that always sticks out about, like, what people say to me is our standards are so low right now that when we perform well for 15 minutes in a game, we come away from it thinking, oh, we played all right today. But the standards are just so bad. And I'd like, going back to the first thing about this whole talk was about the supporters' trust, saying that, you know, we've lost all the momentum and excitement around the club from winning the Europa League. It's just, I mean, it is just crazy how we've got to this position. Honestly, it's negligence, it's embarrassing, and to me it's sinister,
incompetent. I mean, could sit here for another half an hour describing words for it, to be honest with you. Just to answer Artist T quickly as well, I mean, look, enough said. You could go to show jumping, you could turn on bowls, you could turn on darts, it doesn't matter. There's a crowd there singing, Tottenham get battered everywhere they go. That should tell you more than enough you need to know. Everybody outside of Tottenham fans hates Tottenham. They would love nothing better to see us go down. You'd see Arsenal and Chelsea snogging each other like they usually do, you know, and everything else. It's going to get absolutely ridiculous. They'll all have a party. All other 17 teams will celebrate like half of them have won something if Tottenham go down. There's the answer to your question. We are hated, but I fucking love it. So let's go.
And just two more from him, Sam. Do you think the home fans will still boo after home losses?
I think there will be some people who do still boo. I think I'll be pretty frustrated if they do boo. Look, I get that it is what it is. You know, these fans are going there and spending their money. But I would think that, you know, without getting into Thomas Frank territory, I would think that if you are a true Spurs fan, no matter how shit it is, now is the time that it's ride or die, you know? Yeah. So we can't be, in my opinion, we can't be sitting in the crowd booing them from minute one, booing them at half time, groaning. I know it's going to be difficult because everyone groans watching football, but just we need to try and support them as much as we can because these players need confidence. And if we just continually take that away from them, then
not helping the situation.
We'll be partly to blame as well, you know?
Yeah. I agree with that. Like, it's reached such a point of despair and scary situation with Spurs that you almost have to try to generate some type of fake optimism, or just, if anything, try to ignore those feelings of frustration and groaning and booing. It's just, normally I don't care about the booing. Normally I'm kind of sometimes even a fan of it, but I do kind of agree at this point in time, it should try to be avoided if possible.
On this though, just quickly, I don't want to go for another 20 minutes. I do want to watch Benfica and Real Madrid. But RST is starting to trigger me a little here. But, like, not RST in general, just some of the comments he's making. It's bringing up memories and flashbacks and stuff like that. It's like I've been to war or something. I have been being a Tottenham fan, I suppose. But look, when it comes to this, I'm starting to be a little bit disappointed by this, what little Spurs representation we do have in the media, that they're also using that media line. It's toxic. It gets like that at any big football club when things aren't going well. We are not an anomaly to any other big football club that when things don't go well, or even teams that are down in relegation for most of the season. We are not an anomaly to that, but they're trying
West
to make
Ham,
it out
Everton.
like we are. Yeah, exactly. They're trying to make it out like we're an impossible fan base, this, that, and the other. At the end of the day, I can almost guarantee you there will be a renewed sort of optimism with this managerial appointment. I think you'll see it with the players on the football pitch. There'll be a renewed energy, and I also think you'll see that with the Spurs fans as well. New manager, let's get behind it. We've got no choice. We've got two options. To Sam's point, we can either unite and get up for the fight, or we can go down fractured like I've seen clubs before, half-empty stadiums and stuff like that. And there's just no one left within a fight, and they're just sinking, and that's it. And then you've got the odd fan in there still standing there crying, singing because he's on his own, more or less. We can go down like that if that's what people want, but we have to get up for the fight now under this guy. We've made the change, 12 games to go. Let's get behind it and see what can happen.
I agree with you. I don't think it's anything unique to Spurs fans. Like, there's so many other case examples of Everton, West Ham. I remember Ange's last games in charge at Forest. He was
West Ham fans went for their ownership a couple of years ago, but that's brushed on the
They went this year, like before Nuno came in. I mean, West Ham was probably the most toxic place probably in the Premier League. Kind of still is, because I think they still hate their stadium, still hate their ownership. And then I remember one of Ange's last games in charge when he lost to, what was it, FC Midtjylland in Denmark, right? That game that they lost at home. I remember the boos were some of the loudest I had ever heard from Forest fans from any of the games that I had watched. So it's not a unique thing. Any big club, if they slip into the situation that we find ourselves in now, fans aren't going to just happy clap their way through it. It's just not.
Arsenal fans were booing when Arteta was in 8. Do you know what I mean?
They boo when he bottled first. I remember they booed at the end of the season last season when they ended up bottling it. They all left the stadium in droves with like 20 minutes to go, in the game. They all immediately abandoned their team. So I agree. I don't think it's anything unique to Spurs. His last question, I think we more or less have answered it kind of throughout the stream. He's saying, do you think Tudor will finally be able to get us some wins with the squad mass? I think we more or less have answered that.
The door is to do, artists. Yeah. Just have some faith. By the way, come with some positive questions next week, for Tottenham Hotspur, rather than always trying to frame them in a negative light. I'm starting to become concerned about you, Aris.
Yeah. There's no positivity on Reddit, Dave.
Yeah, that's true. I was just on there today.
Or in the Facebook comments either.
Yeah, that's true. Sam, what's going on for the rest of the evening?
Well, I didn't actually realize that there was games on today. I've just been in my own world the last couple of weeks. So I'll probably see what we've got in the fridge and then stick on Benfica Real Madrid. Seeing as I missed out on the last game that was crazy. So we'll see what happens in this one.
There we go. And then Dave, I think you've already more or less explained it. A little Benfica Real Madrid. I imagine a nice little dinner cooking up as well.
Yeah, look, my evening's sort of sorted. I've got Real Madrid, I've got the missus, and I've got pancakes, so I'm absolutely sorted for the evening in terms of dinner.
All right, Pancake Tuesday for Davo. Appreciate you guys. Thank you, Artist T. Thank you for the question. Sorry about leaving that a little bit late. Next time, be able to pay you back for Thursday when we have the Irish boys on, and we'll be able to do some of the members' questions a bit more thoroughly. Thank you to Sam for giving up the time out of his evening. Thank you to Billy as well. And thank you to all you guys for supporting the channel. We will see you next time. Big week for Igor Tudor, of course. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.